Hi everyone, my name is Joseph and welcome to today's show. We are doing two different segments today. The first part, we're talking about the newest discretionary policy that came out. And it's not just one policy. USCIS came with a flurry of these memos. There's two specifically I'm diving into, but one of them is about the good moral character in order to get the citizenship. I have the memo in front of me. I have all the updates and changes to the government law regarding good moral character. And since coming out, August 15th, just a few days ago, there's been so many concerns on the ground already. And the whole purpose of me doing these live shows is to report exactly what's going on the ground. Because news media, and this made it onto a lot of the big news media, but they didn't go in depth enough. So that's the first section of this this live show. And then afterwards, we take questions. Feel free to ask any questions as well if you guys have anything. It doesn't have to be about good moral character. Anything that you guys are concerned about, we'll be answering them. Then the second part of the show is about this crazy situation where the client was able to get an I-90, an I-131, a 551 stamp. 551 stamp was like a miracle. But I just want to walk you through the craziness that people have to deal with just so they can get back into the country and go to school. But let's go ahead and get started. So the newest memo about becoming a citizen is restoring a rigorous, holistic, and comprehensive good moral character evaluation standard for aliens applying for citizenship and naturalization. I've been helping people naturalize for more than 15 years. Ever since I was in high school and college, I would be here teaching people on how to pass the citizenship test, teaching English, teaching civics, teaching reading and writing, and we will be holding seminars ever since I was in high school. Since graduating, been helping people become citizens. So I know very clearly how this citizenship interview process goes. This newest memo really changes everything for people who are applying to become citizens. And since this memo came out, I've already done several consultations with people who are scared to death about becoming a citizen. Why? One client doesn't have the best credit score, and they're concerned that they won't be able to get a citizenship. Another client had a very small minor offense 15 years ago, but since then has been part of the community. None of these people would have had any problem getting their citizenship in the past 5 to 10 years. But suddenly with this newest memo, it is a cause of concern. I'm still telling them to prepare their case and file because we don't know exactly specifically what the training manual is for USCIS officers. We know generally what the law requires. This is how the United States government is adjudicating and deciding whether or not somebody is a good person. So this is the factors that they listed. There's sustained community involvement and contributions to the U.S. What kind of community involvement? What kind of contribution? They don't define it, but you can imagine maybe you're a soccer coach, maybe you're part of a church, maybe you go to temple or go to mass, maybe you're part of the PTA, but sustained community involvement and contribution to the U.S. Family caregiving and responsibility and ties to the U.S. Educational attainment, stable and lawful employment, length of lawful residence, and compliance with tax obligation and financial responsibility in the United States. This is what being a good person looks like, according to USCIS. Obviously, they look at criminal history. That goes without saying. In the past 5 to 10, 15 years, when we apply for citizenship for people, we always include, here's no criminal convictions, and then we talk about the jobs, so we talk about their length in the US, because those are part of the requirements anyways. But the officers never had to do a thorough philosophical analysis of whether or not a person is indeed a good person. In that interview, about 20 to 25 minutes, they have to go through a 40-page form technically supposed to answer every single question and ask every single question. We've done it at this office, literally going through every single one. It takes 45 minutes at a normal conversational pace. Reading every single question and answering yes or no. Reading every single question, answering yes or no. Just going through without no hiccups, it takes almost 45 minutes to go through this crazy long form. And that's just going through the form. And that's technically what they're supposed to do. Afterwards, they're supposed to test your English and your reading and writing, and they're supposed to test you on this 100 civic questions. And then after all of that, analyze the documents you bring in and submit, including a social media scrub, to decide if you are indeed a good person. But, is that an hour? Is that 2 hours? And even if it is an hour, are you saying whether or not somebody could become a citizen based on 1 hour interview? An officer who doesn't know you at all can decide if you're a good person or not? One thing is whether or not the USCIS should change their citizenship interview process. That's one thing. And second, what kind of training are you going to give these USCIS officers? Many of them, maybe it's their first job, right? Maybe they go through the background training, they graduate, they come in, and they're fresh out of law school, and they're here being interviewed. Many of them don't have law degrees, and they're supposed to adjudicate whether or not somebody is a good moral person. And again, it's a discretionary test. I just want to emphasize that. But there's no official point system, right? It's not like, okay, you have a college degree plus 1 point. You have a criminal record, is a misdemeanor, minus 1 point. There's no point system. It's purely based on what the officer thinks and feels. Now, if it is like a felony, then there's deportability guidelines, which is a whole nother training in and of itself, whether or not somebody can get citizenship or whether or not somebody should be deported and get their green card confiscated and they should call ICE. What I'm trying to get at is that by changing this memo, by making something that's relatively straightforward so much more complex, and you don't give the officers the training, the resources, the time to properly evaluate somebody, that is a problem. That is how you destroy an agency. I run an organization. I run many organizations. The fastest way to destroy the organization to run is by forcing people to do too much with too little support, resource, and guidance. Basically, I'm setting them up for failure. I'm setting them up to be destroyed. I'm setting them up to be sued. With this memo, if it is not supplemented by the proper training and guidance, you are setting the USCIS officers who are doing these citizenship interviews day in, day out, you're setting them up for failure. And I mean, tell you, there's so many USCIS officers that are already getting burned out. They're understaffed, they're overworked, they have to process 7, 8 interviews. Sometimes they have to schedule an oath ceremony the day of. They don't have the training. But now they're supposed to adjudicate on top of everything else they're supposed to do, still do it within the 20 minutes, and supposed to decide if they're good or not good person. You know what's going to happen? They're just going to come up with some internal personal bias standard of their own. Basically, I don't think somebody who has a misdemeanor should be a citizen. And internally, doesn't matter what kind of educational attainment, well, this counterbalances it. So I'm just going to not deny you and make the other person wait another year or 2 years to apply again if they muster up enough courage and funds to pay for the filing fees that keeps on increasing every single year. You see what I'm saying? Officers now will have so much discretion, and to make decision process easy, they're going to come up with their own bias. So USCIS officers are not supposed to just look at a single incident. It's supposed to be a it's supposed to be a totality of the circumstance approach. They're supposed to see the person in their whole situation. So just because you don't have a criminal record doesn't mean you are a good person, is essentially what they're saying. Just because you're not working doesn't mean you are a good person, or the other way, just because you are working doesn't mean you are a good person. There's this whole negativity and negative way of trying to prove somebody is a good person. I didn't commit an offense. I didn't violate any laws. I don't even have any tickets. Therefore, I'm a good person. Now they're looking at more things. They're looking at more positive factors. So somebody theoretically could not have any of these, and somebody could theoretically meet all the requirements of a citizenship, right? They stayed here enough. They meet the requirements, the 5 years. They don't have any tax liens. But if the officer looks at them and cannot figure out exactly who they are, they have no social media, they have no work, they have no ties, they live in a hut, they don't pay taxes, but they don't owe taxes, they don't file taxes, they are not working, they're just like living and breathing, they're just farming, maybe them by themselves, they live off the grid, but they're not necessarily better, making America any better. Theoretically, the officer could say, just because you don't have anything that you're detracting doesn't mean you deserve to be a citizen. And so this becomes an extremely philosophical question. What does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be a good American? What does it mean, and who do we want to be American? According to this memo, they want community involvement, but make sure it's not any community involvement that is anti-America. Well, what does it mean? I need to be part of the community in order to be American, and the United States celebrate free speech, but there are certain organizations that you definitely don't want us to be a part of, because being part of those organizations is anti-America. It's almost like this whole ChatGPT AI situation. We want to make sure the AI softwares is empowering human intelligence, but make sure it is not supporting DEI. You know, it's like there's specific clarifications. Then it's almost hard to say, well, is this truly egalitarian? Is this truly freedom of speech? Is this truly fair? So on this citizenship, they want to see sustained community involvement, but not in this memo. It doesn't really say, but in the other memo, they're very strict against anybody who's part of any organizations that's anti-America. And that's potentially a very big slippery slope that we could go down, right? If you're anti-guns, well, you're anti the Second Amendment, you're anti the Constitution, then you're anti-America, right? If you voted, God forbid, you voted for somebody in New York that it has a socialist tendency, does that mean you're anti-democracy? Who knows, right? Because it's up to the officer in their discretionary judgment on what they think. So this becomes a very, very tricky situation. But I believe that there are good officers. And my entire gripe with this is not that USCIS should have discretionary measures. I love the fact that the United States government has discretionary, has grace, has forgiveness, and allows for second chances, right? That is, I think, one of the best things about a well-structured law, but it needs to be matched with good training. And so based on my experience with USCIS, with all the interviews that we've done, I know these officers don't have enough training and they don't have enough time to do these citizenship adjudications. And these are already taking record amount of times, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and then sometimes backlog for a year and a half, 2 years. People have to sue the government for mandamus in order to get their citizenship approved, right? Research is online. There's thousands of these stories. Citizenship application adjudication is already taking extremely long now, before officers are also required to wear the hat of being a philosopher. Now, it's probably even more so. So I would recommend USCIS to give really clear guidance on how they evaluate somebody's, whether or not they have good moral character, and give the proper training to the individuals. I'll take questions.
Okay. If I was granted a waiver 212C because I have an aggravated felony, can I become a citizen?
Great question. That's exactly what we're talking about today. And again, there is no clear guidance on this, right? And so according to what they're saying, community involvement, family caregiving, educational attainment, how long have you been a green card holder, length of your U.S. residence in the U.S., tax obligations. Let's say you meet every single one of those, right? You're a working individual, you pay all your taxes, you've lived in the U.S. for 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years. You are the head of the household, you care for everybody, your grandkids loves you, you're the godfather of so many different people. You know, you're part of a church, you're a deacon, you're an elder, you're doing everything you can, but you have this one offense. And maybe you'll make the argument that you're not deportable, but is that sufficient to become a citizen? What if the officer says, you know what? Most people in my community don't have any criminal offenses. And so despite having all of that, you are worse than the average individual in my community. And therefore, you can't be a citizen. How random is that, right? So the best advice is to prepare for the worst, prepare the good argument that you're not deportable, and then prepare the argument that you are better than the average person in your community. And this is going to be, chaotic. I can totally foresee one of the cases where you have to build up, but what is the, average community member? Well, what is their average credit score? What is their average income? What is their average educational level? What is their average criminal record, right? All these other statistics are going to come out. And basically you're bashing on all the Americans and showing that you're better. That's what this memo sets the fight up to be, which is crazy, But anyways, that's what the government wants right now.
What's your input on last year's September 2024 CSPA memo?
Last year or this year?
Last year's.
Last year's was great, right? It helps even more people and clarified more CSPA eligibility so that people can still get it. But last month's CSPA memo, or the last month or last couple of weeks, basically cancels everything out. And if you haven't heard about it or seen that, it's quite devastating, right? So all the CSPA memos in the past 3 years all got canceled. And as of today, you cannot apply based on last 3 years CSPA memo.
I overstayed my visa as a J-1, and they denied my waiver and my I-130 and my 485. What should I do? What's the next step?
U visa is potentially an option. We don't do it here at the firm. That's something you could look into. Cancellation or removal, which you don't qualify yet. And if you get an NTA, notice of intent to appear, is stop the clock. Something else to look into.
I changed my name during the citizenship interview, but I regret it. Can I change it back?
Yes. You can't change it with the USCIS office anymore, but you can always change your name at the family court, at your local family court. Name change.
Any approval of cancellation of removal cases recently? My husband had his paused and the case was reopened recently. So cancellation of removal.
Yeah. Let me just start by saying a lot of immigration judges and immigration courts are forced to reopen cases. So don't necessarily think they're intentionally attacking you. That's just the pressure. And just because it's reopened doesn't mean it will be denied. Prepare well, make your best argument. Since it was closed till now, hopefully you guys have mustered up additional equities that you can present to the court, additional family ties, additional work history, additional, just benefit to the United States. Now, have we seen any 42Bs or 42As been approved? Yeah, I definitely see it. But that doesn't necessarily mean your case will get approved, right? So there are still lots of good immigration judges. There's still a lot of good cases. So you just got to really do your best.
Can I still be detained if I have my residency in process and already had my biometrics taken?
Yes, right? Even if you get your green card, you can get detained. Even if you become a citizen, you can be detained, right? So let alone you're in the process of trying to get a green card. Right?
But could you get out afterward?
It depends on why you're getting detained, right? So most of the time, ICE is going after people who are unlawfully here and or have criminal background records or outstanding warrants, right? So hypothetically, you're in the process of getting a green card. You filed the 45, everything is pending. You have your biometrics done. Sure, that doesn't really protect you at all, but you have your 45 receipt. That is your biggest protection. And then suddenly, local police office puts out a warrant for you. ICE gets it. They're happy to detain.
For the name change, it's still pending. Can I change it before they tell me my ceremony date? Like amend the form or something?
You might be able to. And the way you go about doing it is you might want to file a motion to reopen for your N400 case. You go to the field office and request the office. You could do an info pass. These are all separate ways, by the way, not like in steps. But basically, you want them to pull that entire file, redo the whole thing, and then, because once they, type up the certificate, give it to the judge, then the judge is there stamping it, and then you officially have your new name. So you want to reopen that, and so then they can give the new name.
Sounds like way more work than...
It's more... It might be equal amount of work, because a full-on name change could take a couple months. It's actually pretty expensive. So motion to reopen might be a little bit faster, but it's a lot more uncertainty, and they might not be willing to do it.
Can you still marry in the States, or do you have to go outside the States?
To get married? I'm not quite sure what the question is, but plenty of people fly into the U.S., get married. Plenty of people fly outside of the U.S., get married. Plenty of people go cross state lines and get married. There's some people who you can even get married online and then meet in person to consummate that marriage. So those are all the options that are available.
Is it safe to leave the country to go home if I had been advanced parole?
If you have an advanced parole, that means you don't have a green card yet. If you have an advanced parole and you leave and you come back in, technically you should be able to get back in. The risk is, on top of everything else, what if your case gets denied while you're abroad and then you cannot come back in? What if your advanced parole expires once you're abroad and you cannot get back in? What if your advanced parole gets lost and you have a hard time getting back in? That is the risk that you take if you travel on advanced parole. The purpose of advanced parole is so that you can travel. Just know you're taking on those risks. And we've seen every single one of those happen. Losing the advanced parole expired and they didn't know it was expired. They were abroad on advanced parole, and then the 751 gets canceled and so they couldn't get back in.
I just graduated law school, and I want to reopen my case to terminate an order of removal so that I can pursue H-1B. Is this the right time to reopen, or should I just wait?
You can try to reopen and just get in line. There's so much. There's probably more than 3 million cases on backlog. They're processing a couple 100,000, a year. Whether or not they will be able to reopen is a matter of time. So the sooner you do it, the sooner you might get it. It might take a year, right? So if you need to do this sooner or later, might as well start now.
I have a 25-year-old DUI. Should I even bother applying for citizenship?
Yes, apply for citizenship.
My N400 was approved on the spot, but it's not reflected in my account yet. Is that normal?
They're slow.
Can I safely travel home with a 10-year green card and come back in? I don't have any criminal record.
Most likely you will be fine.
I was released in April 2021. I filed asylum in 2021. Have you had any news with asylum interviews? The interview is still pending.
We don't do asylum cases. I really don't know.
My green card or my citizenship is still pending. Did it on July 3rd. Does this new memo affect me?
The new memo affects people afterwards, and they're still going through the training. And typically, in my experience, having seen USCIS memos and training, it takes half a year before any sort of guidance really comes out for their own internal training staff. So as of today, even though this memo came out, Unless the case is really bad, the officers really don't like the person, then they might do something. But that, generally speaking, almost all the officers as of today, they're still adjudicating cases as if this memo didn't come out, right? They're still just doing it based on their training in the past. And then if you already had your interview, I wouldn't worry too much about it.
This is about the marriage inside the case. Best case, if you want to maximize your chance of approval, is it better to have them come into the U.S. and marry here or go outside?
Whatever matches your story and can come up with the best documents wins. So if all the family members are here in the U.S., you do a destination wedding, fly over here, have a big ceremony, spend a lot of money. There's a lot of documents and receipts and contractors to prove all of that. You have a lot of documents and you file, your case is most likely bona fide. If you do an online marriage and then you meet in some remote place and you have no documents whatsoever to show that your marriage is real, that's probably the worst choice.
Yeah.
But if you have to do that, that's the only way to meet, then that's your only option, right? So if you have multiple options, then it's a big balancing act between what you guys want, what's most desirable, and also what's the highest chance of success. And the highest chance of success always comes back to your story and your documents.
Can I apply for a self-report if I am placed in an expedited removal? Maybe self-deport?
You can. The question is, will they take you? So if you are in expedited removal proceedings, if ICE has already detained you, if you're already in a detention center, and you say, okay, I give up, you caught me, I'm gonna go out, I'm willing to self-deport right now, take me away, right? I'm gonna pay for my own ticket, I'm gonna do everything. The question is, will they honor that, respect that, and let you? Because it's a lot of work. Get you to buy a ticket, take you to the airport, right? Or take you to the border, wait for you to go out. You're basically asking them to be your personal chauffeur. That's a lot of cost and money, and they are already short on resources. Or, you definitely don't expect them just to say, oh, thank you, I'll just let you go without a bond and just to walk out and go to the border yourself. They can't do that, right? So just know what you're asking. And that's why in almost all the consultations I've done regarding self-deportation, all the people have just voluntarily left the country, self-deport, and then report to ICE, say, hey, I'm already gone. Nobody does the whole self-deportation process while in detention. But that's my opinion. I don't actually know if ICE is doing it. Maybe they do it on certain occasions. Maybe if you're already next to the border, right? You got caught with CBP at the border, and then you're at the border, and then they let you self-deport. But if any other situations, I sort of highly doubt that they're willing to take you.
What is the effect of living in different states if you have adjustment of status pending F1 and military spouses?
So let me paint the picture. Situation, you're an international student, you got married to somebody who's in the military, your spouse, who is a U.S. citizen in the military, is deployed in a different state or overseas, and your status is pending. Can you still get a green card, right? If the officer approves the I-130, believes that the marriage is real, interviews you for the 45, believes the marriage is real, they can issue the green card. Maybe USCIS is too swamped and they just approve the I-130 and 45 very, very quickly and you get the green card. Great, but at the 751 interview, right, when you're trying to get a 10-year green card, then they will scrutinize a lot more. So we see a lot of that. We see a lot of USCIS officers, because they're so backed up with so many cases, these initial green card filings, they prove it relatively easily, but it's the second 10-year green card where they come back and they scrutinize it, right? So if they see in the record, oh, you never got an interview for your first green card, and then you were living in different states for the 2 years that you were married, then on the 10-year green card application, they might really slowly adjudicate it, meaning sometimes 4 years, sometimes 6 years. And the entire time you have a conditional green card, you're getting stamped, and so you're legally here, but it's just they drag it out.
I filed an I-130 for my wife and kids 3 years ago. Haven't had a response. What's the problem?
USCIS is slow. 2 years, sometimes 3 years is what they take for these long-term green card applications. And it's crazy, right? Something's supposed to take 8 minutes, 12 minutes, takes years, but that's just how backed up they are with these type of cases.
Can I apply for my green card for my daughter? She's 18 years old.
Can I apply a green card for my daughter? She is 18 years old. And how old are you? And what is your status? Yeah.
What are the options available for someone who was brought here as a child, but they can't do DACA? Presumably without an inspection.
Somebody who came into the country, they don't qualify for DACA. Then the big question is, when they enter the country, did they enter without inspection or did they just overstay a visa? If they just overstayed a visa when they're really young, then they are unlawfully here. But if they get married to a U.S. citizen, they can apply for adjustment of status through the 245A, and they can get a green card. If they were brought here without inspection, just kind of cross the border, smuggled through a car or a ship or something like that, they enter without inspection, then if you do get married to a green card holder or a U.S. citizen, you still have to apply for a 601 waiver and prove that without the undocumented individual, the U.S. citizen or the green card holder will suffer extreme hardship without them. And so the United States, to protect their own, forgives the unlawful action.
Okay, my CSPA case is a little bit strange. So I sent an inquiry to remain in my category because I was eligible for CSPA, but once my petition was approved, spent 1 year to adjudicate, and the Department of State said no. I got an interview when I was 24, and I think CSPA was denied. Why?
There's probably some misunderstanding on your part or the Department of State's part, but just know that the Department of State consulate's decisions are final and you cannot appeal it. And the past 3 years memo doesn't apply to them. So based on their calculation, if you don't qualify, it's really hard to overturn it.
My case was denied. My case is not decided. It's pending because my dad was a U.S. citizen before 18, but I wasn't here. I wasn't a resident either, but they think I'm a citizen. So my current application is still pending. It's not decided yet.
I see. To try to get citizenship? Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So this is called the N600. Typically, the requirement is you're supposed to enter the country as a green card holder, and you're supposed to live with your U.S. citizen parent, and then you can apply to try to get the citizenship. And that's usually what they require, proof of your entry, your green card, your visa, USCIS document, and then proof that, the two of you have been living together. Sometimes they require a 2-year period. So if you fulfill all of that, then you can directly get a U.S. passport, which proves your citizenship.
Petitioner to be scheduled for the biometric for I-130 for the spouse living abroad. Is that normal?
Say it again. An I-130.
He's scheduled for a biometric. Spouse is abroad.
Oh, I've seen those. It's unusual, but I've definitely seen them happen.
I want to apply for naturalization, but I'm still paying some money, some back taxes to IRS. Will that affect my application?
Yes, because of the good moral character standard that we're talking about today, and it is extremely unfortunate. My recommendation is to treat it like it's a, what is that word? Parole. If you have a criminal conviction, you have a certain amount of years that you're on parole to judge you on basic good behavior. And we usually, at least in the past, don't recommend people filing for F-130 until your parole is over. So in your situation, maybe you finish paying off your back taxes and then apply for citizenship, maybe looks a lot better. That's my recommendation. Now, if you have to file ASAP, then you have to come up with a whole bunch of other things to prove that you don't owe any. Even though you do owe back taxes and you came up to an agreement, then you're just paying it. But there's all these other things to show that you have good moral character, right?
Can a 10-year green card holder have issues? They come back to the U.S., they previously overstayed their visa. Now they have a green card, they're coming back.
Yeah, if you already have a green card, your prior unlawful presence doesn't really affect you. It's more so your criminal conduct in the past 5 years since you got your green card. That's the biggest thing that they're concerned about.
I have one DUI. Will that affect citizenship?
Potentially. So the new law that hasn't, to the best of my understanding, haven't passed yet, at least doesn't cause you to get your green card taken away and doesn't cause you to lose your citizenship or get any chance of losing your citizenship, right? But having any DUI based on this new memo is a definite demerit. But that doesn't mean you can't qualify. We've done plenty of citizenship applications with people who have 1 or 2 DUIs. You still can prove it. You still have to go above and beyond and prove you've done everything else in life. You know, you've achieved great educational attainment, you've achieved great stature in society, you've paid taxes, you employ people, you have your company, you do charity, you're a coach, things of that nature.
I had a DUI 8 years ago. I'm waiting for my interview date. Should I drop the case?
No. This memo just came out. There's no killer guidance yet. Just do a good job in preparing your best. This might be your one shot. What if you drop the case and later on a new law passes with the DUI, you can't get citizenship, then you just lost your one chance, right?
If you get caught, sent back to home country, and then came back again before IRA 1997, is there a chance?
I have no idea.
Do you have to leave the U.S. if you don't have legal entry?
So the question is, if I entered without inspection, EWI, do you have to leave? And the answer is, every day you stay is unlawfully present. ICE can detain you, kick you out, and you have deportation proceedings, and it'll become, impossible to come back, arguably. So should you leave because you are breaking a U.S. law? The answer is yes. But are there legal pathways for you to get a green card and change your status? And the answer is also yes, right? The U.S. immigration law, with all its wisdom, allows for people who entered without inspection to still get a green card if certain conditions are met. Obviously, if you're helping the police catch bad guys, U visa, you can still get a green card. If you are married to a U.S. citizen, right? And then it will cause extreme hardship on them if you leave. You can get a green card, right? If you apply for the EB-6 parole program, you can get a status at least, right? And if the Trump card comes out, 5 million, 10 million investment, whatever it is, potentially you could be paroled. So your question, if somebody enters without inspection, EWI, do they have to leave? That there's a lot of layers to that question, right? Legally, right now, ICE can pick you up and deport you. You are breaking law, so you can't leave. But are there any legal pathways for you to be able to stay? There are.
My parents' interview for IR5 is scheduled. I received an email. Will I also be receiving mails?
Interview where?
For IR5.
Yeah, but where? Is it over? If it's at the consulate overseas, it's mostly email. If it's in the U.S. with USCIS, it's mostly mail. If it's IR5, it's probably overseas, but maybe you guys are already in the U.S. So, so if you want the physical mail, most of the time it's only in the U.S. I rarely see consulates do mail.
Can they put me in removal proceedings and deny my citizenship because of an old DUI?
Totally possible, especially if the new law comes out.
My N400 is pending for 8 months and my 751 pending for a year and a half. Can I send an inquiry?
That might be too soon, right? 751s typically take 2 years plus. And then N400, you could do the inquiry, but they cannot adjudicate your N400 until you're 751, right? And so typically what you do is 8 months, 9 months, a year, N400 interview comes first. You pass the interview, then you plead with the officer to push your 751 application, or the N400 officer just simultaneously does both interviews at the same time which some officers have that training.
I had my interview for my marriage green card a few months ago, about a month and a half ago, and I haven't gotten a response. What should I do now?
You can only wait. And maybe you're under fraud investigation. That's always a possibility. So you haven't heard anything for a month, you haven't heard anything for 6 months, you haven't heard anything for 2 years. Just know, maybe the officer suspects something about the marriage. They give it to an agent, and an agent is, knocking on doors. Your neighbors, your coworkers, they're sitting outside and they're just trying to document, is this marriage real, right? Because they're not going to ask you, is it real, right? They have to do other things that you don't suspect in order to find out if it's real. And they have to write a report to go back to the officer, to call you back to the interview and ask you about what happened, right? So, but if you have a good case, I wouldn't worry about it. They're just slow. But if you have a bad case, that's what might happen.
Does USCIS have jurisdiction over C1 visa matters?
Does USCIS have jurisdiction? USCIS has jurisdiction over cases that's filed with them. So if it's a visa issue and you came in and you're on the visa, you're not filing with USCIS, they typically don't have any jurisdiction. They don't have a case, right?
I have a 212C waiver for an aggravated felony. Can I apply for citizenship?
If you meet the good moral character, right? So you might not, you can have a waiver so you're not deportable, but you have to go through a lot of hoops in order to overcome the good moral character for citizenship.
My wife is a Pakistani dentist who has 13 years of clinical experience, but no research articles published. Also, she has not cleared INBDA yet. EB1A, does she qualify?
The beautiful thing about EB1A is that it's a factor test and there's a final merits test. So what does that mean? It means there's no one way to prove somebody is extraordinary. You mentioned a few things that she doesn't have. What are the things that she does have that prove that she is a better doctor compared to her peers? That's the thing that you really want to separate yourself from. Maybe she's a famous YouTuber. Millions of people follow her. Maybe she's the private doctor for the president and all foreign dignitaries that go to Pakistan. Maybe she's responsible for them. That is pretty noteworthy. So don't focus on what she doesn't have. You could explain it, say, oh, that she's just not into that stuff. But here's what she does have and prove that she is above and beyond everyone else.
If my arrest got erased with no conviction last year, am I still eligible for citizenship?
Let me say this. Even if your arrest was not expunged, not erased, and even if you do have a conviction, you could still be qualified for a citizenship, right? Vice versa. Just because your case was erased doesn't mean USCIS doesn't see it, and doesn't mean they therefore will think you are a good person just because it's erased. They could still decide, I don't like you, you are a terrible person, I would deny you so that situation is not sufficient nor necessary in order to become a citizen.
If that new House bill does not become law, could they still remove my green card because of a past DUI or deny my citizenship?
Deny your citizenship is much easier for them to do because it's a good moral character, holistic kind of analysis, right? They could say you're not paying enough taxes, you don't have enough college credentials, God forbid. So denying citizenship much easier with this new memo because this is officially law now, right? The good moral character, it is officially their discretionary authority. It's a totality of the circumstance analysis. So they could deny your citizenship based on DUI if they wanted to. Do your best to argue that they shouldn't. Can they deport you? It's their burden of proof. It's much harder to do. But once the law passes, it will become much more easy for them to do.
The status on CEAC is refused before I have the interview. Why is that?
They probably have found something in their record where you don't qualify. And so they don't even want to waste their time on an interview.
I am from Pakistan. I need an investment visa for the US. What's the minimum investment I need?
You need an investment for a visa.
Investment visa.
So if you're talking about the EB-5 to get a green card, right? There's the 800,000 EB-5 investment to get a green card. If you're talking about you need a visa to be able to stay in the country, like you want to invest in a business, you want to start a business, then there's all sorts of things, right? Look into the L1. So that's the difference. So EB-5, there's a hard requirement. It's not like a gauge. You have to invest that much, but it depends on which area and which projects you invest in. So just look up EB-5. And then if you're talking about just any sort of visa to be able to stay in the country, you don't get a green card from it, but L1, you just have to start a business. Then it's not so much about amount you invest, it's about how good your business is, right?
Or E2, would that work too?
I don't think Pakistan can do E2. Yeah, you have to look up country qualifications.
Is it possible to apply for a green card under employment? I have DACA and I'm the only employee at the office.
You're the only employee at the office. Yes, it is possible to still get a green card through your employer, EB2, EB3, even if you're on DACA. There's plenty of videos out there to talk about it. It's for a very select few, right? You don't essentially arguing you don't have unlawful presence. That doesn't apply to you, so you don't have to go through the waiver process. You have legal entry, etc. And then you go through the entire normal EB2, EB3 process. I-140, the perm, I-140, and once everything is approved, then you adjust status.
All right, and our last question, if you have a petty offense like shoplifting, will that cause a denial for adjustment of status?
Based on the good moral character discretionary test that came out as well, right? So the discretionary test for the good moral character that we're talking about today, there's another memo that came out, I think right at the same time, same day or the day after, about adjustment of status. So if you look at discretionary considerations for adjustment of status, the newest memo, it's even broader than good moral character, which means the officer has even more discretion to deny a case. So with that being said, petty theft exception, that applies to people who have a green card to not be deported. But can you even get a green card with a petty theft? You really have to muster up a lot of the documents and to argue. It's abstract, it's philosophical, so do your best. This family lives in Japan. They got their green card, but they cannot come just yet. The child was much younger, just graduated elementary school, going to junior high, and into a very prestigious elite school in Japan. They're planning for their future. How can they come to the United States? That was a couple years ago. Now the child is 16, 1 year, or 16, almost 17, 1 year away from college. But suddenly everything came crashing down. And Kathy's team did a fantastic job, plus a miracle 551 stamp that happened that allowed them basically to re-enter. I'm going to walk you through the story, mostly because people don't realize how incredibly difficult it is to get back into the United States, even if they already have a green card. So many people don't know. If you're a green card holder, you're supposed to live in the US. And if you leave the US for over 180 days, you might get in trouble. The trouble is they might confiscate your green card, they might cancel your green card. 180 days, a year, 2 years, it gets harder and harder the more longer and longer you leave. But here's the problem. The family, they're planning to come to the US, but they don't quite have everything ready just yet. Their investment EB-5 program advanced too quickly. They got the green card too soon, right? You don't hear that very often, but they got the green card too soon. The child was still too young, so they are still based in Japan. They went to a really nice elite school. They don't want to relocate yet. They want to finish their at least high school education in Japan so that they can come here for college. But now the green card is expiring. Their 2-year green card is expiring. Their reentry permit is expiring. What can they do? They only have 2 weeks of summer break in order to leave Japan, come to the US. They need to fix everything in order for them to go back to Japan, finish their last year of high school so that when they come for college, they can smoothly get in and go to college and establish their life. So everything depended on in these 2 weeks. Kathy's team had to do the following: prepare the entry package so they can get into the US with a nearly expired green card, with a nearly expired reentry permit, and having been gone of the US for nearly 2 years. But everything was successful. They came in. That's step one. Step two, next day filing the green card renewal plus the reentry permit. That was very difficult to do because their green card doesn't quite expire just yet. So we had to pre-file an expired green card when it's not expired yet. We don't know if that will be approved yet. We are still making the petition. It might take 6 months, but this is our one shot. Because if we don't do it now, then they leave, a green card gets denied, they don't have a green card anymore. That would be a big problem. Filed a green card renewal when the green card wasn't expired yet, filed an emergency request, the reentry permit. At least that was the plan A, just so you have these two things. Oh, and then an expedited biometrics, because again, the kid was 16 2 years ago when they applied for reentry permit. They didn't have a biometrics. Now they do because they're over 14. So have to file the I-90, file the I-131, and get an emergency biometrics to get their fingerprint so they can leave. Fingers crossed in hopes that within 6 months, within 1 year, once they're studying in Japan, that the new green card will come down, the new reentry permit will come down, so that next year after they graduate, they can come back to the US with an entry package, which with all of this, so that they can convince the officer that they did not abandon their US home, right? That was plan A. Plan B was to also get a 551 stamp. The problem with that is 551 stamps typically take a long time to schedule to even go to interview. 551 stamps you typically have to get when the green card is almost expired. Again, the green card is not yet expired. We even have an I-90. They only have 2 weeks. They're in person. It was all a last-ditch effort. But the miraculous thing is that the officer approved it and stamped the passport with a 551, allowing his green card to extend for 1 year. And so even if plan A doesn't work, even if the green card is not approved, even if the reentry permit isn't approved, he got the 551 stamp so that he can leave and he can come back again next year to start his college admissions. So much craziness and hard work and to boil everything down, and having to do that within 2 weeks, having to pre-plan everything, pre-prepare everything, come in, file next day, hope it happens, because you have one shot, one opportunity. If it doesn't work, it's gone, and there's severe consequence. If they go back to Japan, if the green card is denied, if the reentry permit is denied or not issued or lost or stolen, now the kid cannot come back to the US, even if admitted to an Ivy League. Even if, everything goes smoothly, that the father gets a 10-year green card, if the whole family moves to the US, the child might not be able to come, might have to postpone their college by a year, might have to get an international student visa to come. Think about all the major consequences just because they want to finish their high school abroad while having a green card. You might think it should be simple, right? A very prestigious family from the elite society in Japan shouldn't be a problem. Should just be a request. But look at all these little nuances that had to happen within a very short period. And we've been preparing this for months in order for them to execute it as well. But again, Kathy did it. Very happy for her. And it's not the big wins that I want to, crazy celebrate. Of course, we celebrate the big wins. But it's these little tiny 551 stamp that really paves the way for comfort and peace for the next year that I think deserves a video and celebration as well. So just want to share that with everyone. It's just so much work to have a green card to live overseas. Technically you could say they chose this. They should have, when they got the green card, they should have just relocated to the US, go to a school in the US. They chose to be abroad. It's their fault, their problem. Fair critique. But people apply for green cards not so they can have an extra card in their wallet, in their passport. People apply for green cards to make their life better. And if they are already going to an elite school, They want the green card. They want to come to the U.S. afterwards. It's hard to timing the green card process. They got a 2-year green card. 10-year green card is not guaranteed yet. So for the family, this was a temporary nature. They do everything correctly. They apply for a reentry permit. They apply for an I-90. They do biometrics. But ultimately, it's still not guaranteed. And so, again, for Americans, people who don't have to deal with the immigration process, if you think going to college is expensive, if you think getting into college is hard, there are so many thousands and hundreds of thousands of people who, on top of getting into college, on top of paying a higher tuition fee, trying to even be able to get into the country to go to the school, they have to face challenge for years that you didn't even think is possible. And they had to go through this year after year in order just to get in, to get their fingerprint, to get their reentry permit. But just want to share that with you guys. When people talk about, oh, there's these international students, we don't want to welcome them. They go through so much to get into the country, and that should be a compliment of how great our country is, that so many people want to come. And again, they're doing everything correctly, reentry permit, biometrics, and they got the 551 stamp, and we're so happy for them. But for every one that gets it, maybe 1,000 don't, and they're very lucky to have gotten it. Again, props to Kathy. And that's the success story that I want to share with you guys.
Okay, thank you all for watching. Sorry we couldn't answer everyone's questions. You can always come in next week, same time, or book a consultation on our website.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.